good morning, good afternoon, and good night to some of you. So hopefully we won't put you to sleep just yet. So we'll make a start. So as I said, this is another digital session, a specific series of events that we're running here at Revisto right across the globe. So the recipe for the digital campus is what we're going to be looking at today. So I'm going to chair today's Revit. My name's Rhys Lewis. I'm our Business Development Director for EMEA. I'm joined as well by an interesting panel here. We have Mike Ford from UWE. Sasha Kunar, based in Germany, is going to be talking about what we've been doing with Bentley MicroStation and our integrations there. And then a teaser from Lewis Guy towards the end, finished with a Q&A session where you'll be able to ask as many questions as you like to today's presenters. We aim to be done by sort of an hour and a half. The session will be recorded and shared with anybody that's been that is registered for the event. So you'll get access to that following the session today. So this is the second European Revit that we've done. Digital now, sort of considering the current situation, but the first one, I just wanted to recap on that. Lewis and we were out in Budapest back in March. That was a really successful event. We had about 30 people, I think, come and meet us in person with our local partner Chorus, and doing some really interesting things there with Revisto in Hungary. So we plan to continue to host these events digitally and in person throughout the course of the rest of this year and into next year. So if you would like to be part of our Revit series, to share something interesting that you've learned in your workflows that's specific to Revisto or not, then please do get in touch. We'd love to give you the platform to share that knowledge with the wider digital community. So a little bit more on Revisto. So Revisto is actually a really mature product. We've been around now for 8.5, 9 years, and there's just some interesting stats there based on usage right across the world. Mike will be able to tell us more about that now when we look at his digital campus. But just for those of you that may be new to Revisto, we have a rapidly growing customer base, and one of our favorite customers is here at the top, but you can see there's a number of companies that are benefiting from using Revisto: owners, operators, contractors, and designers that are all faced with the same challenge, which we'll talk about in a bit more detail today, which is what our integrated collaboration platform solves. So we're a tool that sits on top of Unity that allows the majority of the project team to use Revisto to manage and track project-based tasks for quite a duration of the project. So through design into construction and into operation. Part of the reason we've got Mike here today is to show you how they're using Revisto right across the RIBA stages and the creative ways they're using Revisto's issue tracker. And why use an integrated collaboration platform like Revisto? Well, rather than me explain that to you, we've actually got an expert with us today that is going to talk to you in much more detail about how they're using it more than I can. So with that in mind, I'll hand over to Mike Ford from the University of West of England to talk about what they've been doing in this space. So Mike, the recipe for the digital campus. If you could unmute yourself, Mike.
Yeah, I've unmuted. Good afternoon, everyone. I can't share my screen at the moment, Rhys. So
let me stop sharing, and that should give you access to share. So yeah, and also, firstly, thanks for coming in to Mike. He's actually given more Revisto presentations this week than I have. So we'll get you a t-shirt soon, Mike, I promise. But yeah, if you share your screen, don't see anything coming through just yet, that would be great. What we'll do now is we'll actually turn off the camera so you can concentrate what's going on the screen. But we just wanted to say hello and let you know we're all real. So let me stop sharing my video.
Great. Can you see my screen now, Rhys?
Yes, we can, Mike. Yeah. So
and will you just shout if anything goes wrong?
Mike, everything's looking great. So please continue. I'll unmute myself now. Over to you, Mike.
Okay, thanks very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Mike Ford. I'm from the University of the West of England, based in Bristol in the UK. And I'm just going to share a bit of our story about how we've been digitizing our campus and, of course, also using Revit. So So first of all, I may have a few baking analogies in the recipe for Digital Campus, so apologies for those. And yeah, that's me, Mike Ford. Right, so onto the presentation. So what I've tried to tackle this from is from the FM point of view. So I've spoken to lots of people in our industry that are trying to sort of replicate what you have done, and they're having certain difficulties. So this is really written from their perspective. So step one in the recipe is to convince everyone from the boss down that they like cake, they want cake, and life will be miserable until they have cake. So what do we mean by that? Well, let's start with looking at the benefits. So if we want to adopt BIM in our organization, the first thing we need to do is be able to sell the benefits. So I've got a list of benefits here. Rather than have a lot of slides like I've done in the past, we're actually going to drop into a live demo in Revisto to look at all of these. So our first item there is all building data available in the field, and hopefully I'm going to be able to switch screens, and hopefully you can follow that. And Rhys, let me know if you can't see a building right now. So hopefully
Mike.
You
no,
can?
Nothing.
No,
No, that didn't work.
I think you have
It
to
did when we
share the
practiced
screen.
earlier, right? So
Yeah,
maybe if you minimize the slide, and then
Yeah.
I think when you share your screen, Mike, you can choose to share the screen or the application. So maybe just reshare. And
So I've done something wrong already.
that's all right.
Is the
Beat me to
application
it for a
showing now?
change. Not yet. We can see the PowerPoint.
Okay. 2 seconds. Then let me just get back into Zoom. Sorry about this, guys.
That's all right.
Screen.
We are live, so yeah.
Right. Let's try.
There we go.
Anything now?
Yeah, there we go. You cracked it.
Brilliant.
Back on track, Mike.
Back on track. Right. So our first point there was all building data available in the field. So what we can see here, we can have on the field on an iPad. So we've got our building, we've got our design. We can swap between the existing phase and the proposed, so we can see what we're doing. And the main point I was trying to make here was about data. So if I venture into the building, and we just click on something at random, let's take that light over the door. The point here is we've got all of that data about that component available in the field. And when it comes to managing the facility, being able to get to all of that when you're out and about on site is a really powerful tool. So my next point was about dynamic ways of being able to view information. So right now we're in a 3D model type view. If we want to, we can turn on these scissors, and we can quickly get into a sectional view, and we can push and pull that, and we can start having conversations about how high things are above ceiling level. We can, if we want to, go in there and we could add a dimension in as we're discussing this in a meeting or something like that. And when we're sort of thinking about the maintainability of different assets and things like that. What a lot of our users still like is the good old-fashioned plan view. And if I go into 2D here, if I click on this button here, you see we've got lots of different building plans available. So we can still have that discussion in 2D, and when we want to, we can switch that into a 3D view and continue the conversation on the 3D model with all the benefits that's bringing us as well. So I'm finding it's really quite helpful in upskilling users and giving them something they're comfortable with, and then allowing them to stretch themselves into maybe venturing into the next tab along, which is the 3D button. So enhanced coordination. Yes. Sorry guys, I just want to just bring up my notes on my second screen. Yeah, so we've got the.
There we go. Got a mic.
So, sorry, yeah. So we've got the 2D area, we've got the 3D area, and then into the kind of coordination we've got our issue tracking environment as well. So we can put notes in around what we're doing in the building, like I've got a problem in this area, and we can assign that to someone to resolve. We set those filters there. I can show you some of those. So asbestos model update needed here. We've got a clash with the radiator, and you can see all these communications being kept in one location, which is quite powerful. We can then report on that. We've got access to all of that data. So before we might have had that room full of O&M manuals, which no one ever actually went to visit. And now we've got all this dynamic information available on a tablet in the field. It's actually much more useful, much easier to get to it. So the other activities that we might be doing. So if I just drop back into the 3D model and I take this cut off, we might have to send someone out to go and do checks on something like emergency lights, for example. And what would be really useful is if we could highlight those lights within the space. And I think what I've ended up with here is multiple phases turned on. So we can see we've got lights up here in the ceiling. If I click here and come down to lighting in the list, lighting fixtures, I can turn them on and off there, but what I want to do is make them easier to find. So I can make them all turn red. And then as I'm walking around doing my my emergency lighting checks, I've got everything really standing out for me. Another common problem in buildings, and I'm just going to snap back to the home view and go in through the front door. You see here we've got ceilings in the way. So not only is this a problem actually on site, because we might want to know what services are above them. We don't necessarily want to start removing ceiling tiles, but obviously the same ceiling is getting in the way in the model. The difference being in the model, we can just double click on that ceiling. Oh, I think I clicked on the grid. And we can just turn it off. Easy as that. And then we can see where these trunkings and things are running above ceiling height. Another thing we can do is I showed you we can select things, and we've got all this data available. We can have hyperlinks in this data as well, so we can go to things like the manufacturer's information if we put that data in at the beginning. So my next point was on how we coordinate. So as a university, we have lots and lots of projects going on over a summer period, and I'll just check with Rhys. Has my screen changed?
Yep.
Yep, so great. So what you're looking at here is what information we put out during the summer period to help us coordinate the different works in different areas of the building. So due to COVID, there's not a great deal going on site this year. So this is last year's summer works we're showing here. All of the areas in red are different projects on site. We've got the areas in yellow showing where we had summer school activity over the summer. And the purple areas were where we've got site compounds and things like that. So obviously what we're really keen is being able to sort of see where the projects are and see that they're not going to interfere with summer school activities, and also have an understanding of, you know, perhaps there's works on one level of the building which is going to cause noise to staff on another level. So you get this very quick overview. You can see what areas of the buildings have works. If you happen to be a member of staff working in a certain area, you can come over to this table on the right hand side and see if your room's affected, the start and end dates, and who our project manager is, if you need to get into contact with anyone. What I want to show is that this is all coming from a 3D model. And if I just go into here, and if I do the old Alt click trick to zoom a bit closer, and zoom back out again, you can see, for example, here we've got summer schools either side and below, somewhere where there's some active project works going on. So that would have needed a bit of closer coordination. But this is much better than what we've done previously in having flat plans, because you really get an understanding of the depth of the building, the 3D nature of the space. And you've also got that information, so we can click on something and we can see there the object name is its room number, so we know that it's that room. And down here we can find the project name and also the end of use date on there as well. So that's been something really quite powerful. Another way in which we've used these models is to communicate, to enhance communication, to be able to show a 3D fly through or a walkthrough, and that's helped us getting sign off for different schemes. So, for example, the project I was showing you at the beginning, we've done a little walkthrough coming up this ramp going into the building, and we've shown that to the Vice Chancellor, and that was key in getting approval for that project to take place. Now, one of the other things we want to do is be able to use the information for safety reasons, to be able to avoid having major issues on site. And as luck wouldn't have it, the only model I haven't opened at the moment is our site plan. So I'm just going to open that as well. And as I do that, I'll carry on talking about different. I'll move on to the next issue. So we'll come back to that site plan and understanding underground services and digging and things. And I'm just going to talk to you about how we're managing asbestos in the meantime when I get this one loading up. Live demos, eh? Right. So I mentioned just then asbestos. So what we've done is we've actually modelled the asbestos into the Revit model, which is what we use as modelling software. And I'll just take a quick plan view of the building. Where you're seeing these areas in yellow, that's where we've got known asbestos in the building. If I double click on one of these areas, you can see there it's asbestos. If I click on the data tab here, you can see we've got vinyl and bitumen there. I can click on this link, only to find it's an error. That was working a few days ago. I think that's more to do with the Amazon web server space where that was hosted, not working at the moment. But that would have linked through directly to the asbestos report, which is it's really powerful. It's allowing us to design around asbestos. Where we know we need to disturb something, we can arrange those asbestos removal works. And where we're leaving things in situ, it's also allowing our contractor to manage that effectively on site. And then into the facilities management, we're also able to manage that for the life cycle of the asset. So our maintenance teams on site are able to avoid dangerous substances as well. So just going back now to my previous point, this is a model of the UE site. We've used basic massing to represent buildings in this view, solely for the reason that it makes the model load a lot faster, because there's an awful lot in this particular model. And what I wanted to show is quite often we need to dig on site. So either holes for new projects to put in new services, or to access existing services, or various reasons that we might need to put a hole in the ground. Whenever we do that at risk if we don't understand what's going on underneath the ground where we're digging. So if we're about to dig a hole in this area, it'd be very, very useful if we can understand what's going on just below the surface of the ground. And hopefully you can all see that there we've got some storm water by the looks of it running just under that area. So either we want to dig to the left or the right, or not dig to the depth of that, so that we don't disturb or damage that pipe. And as many organizations I'm sure we've had issues on site where we've hit or a contractor's hit mains cold water or things like that, and it's really, really disruptive for learning, for the people living on site, and for the scientific research and things that are going on. And as I keep demonstrating, everything's got data, which is great. So I happen to know that blues are surface drainage, but if you didn't, you can just click on it, find that information out. And as I had a question yesterday, which was a really good question, is how do you manage, how reliable is the data in here? Where's it come from? So the information in this model came originally from a two-dimensional plan, which had some height data on it as text, and we were able to convert that into 3D information. But obviously, as with any 2D information, there are areas of interpretation. Perhaps, for example, the drainage was actually really good. We had invert levels for all of the pipes. But some of the other information like cables and things, we just had a depth below the surface, which isn't quite as useful as the surface topography can change, which would of course vary the depth. So we've added this parameter called LOV. It's a level of validity parameter, which relates to a scale. And if I show you also in the 2D plans that back this up, we should have, pick an area of the site that has some services in it, would help. We can then color code on those on that level of validity, so that we know information color coded in red is a lot less reliable than the stuff showing in green or yellow. So we've got the level of validity scale there, and I think that's really important, because as we do survey work and we get to know more detail about different services, we can up that level of validity, and we can manage everything on the same platform, but also know what's reliable and what's not. Right, so I think now it's time to go back to the presentation. So all of that's good stuff, but there is always a but. And the but is just knowing that cake's going to taste good isn't quite enough. So there's always going to be other considerations when we're trying to get investment into digitizing, into great information. You know, the boss isn't going to buy it if the cupcake costs £500, and he's probably not going to eat it if it's got like 40,000 calories in it either. So we need to have an understanding of that. So another point to bear in mind is the boss already has access to cake, just not good cake. So we've always had 2D drawings, we've always had data in Excel, but these represent information silos. If we make a change to one of those 2D drawings, the Excel data doesn't know that we've made the change, and vice versa. So it's always been very difficult to manage multiple platforms that are being updated at different rates, and you know, everything's not being captured, and we're missing things. So coordinated BIM information is a really great opportunity. It's been very, very good for the university, and you know, I think, you know, we need to sell the SpongeBob cake on the right hand side there. So step 2 is to understand what you want to achieve, the tools, training, documentation you need, and the order in which things need to be done. So this is the recipe. So on our first BIM contract, our first project which had a BIM requirement to it, I think we just said, I want BIM level 2, which equates to I want cake. And what you can end up with is something that's a complete mess, because it technically meets the definition of cake. What we need to do is be much more specific. We need to tell our suppliers or contractors what type of cake we want, what that looks like to us, what ingredients we want in there. So we're thinking about what types of data we want, what we want to exist in our model, what things should be modeled, to what level of detail, and all of that sort of stuff. And then also the method. When do we want data to be put into the model? When are we going to use that? How are we going to interact with our suppliers? All of that sort of stuff. And the good thing is the industry's got something that they call an EIR. So the now called the Exchange Information Requirements, which is really the recipe to how we want the cake to be made. So that logically leads on to the question of how do you make an EIR? And the process that we went through for this is we went and found a sample online. The MOJ was a very early adopter of BIM, so they thankfully made their documentation available online. So we took that document, but we're not the MOJ. We don't want to do the same things that they're doing. We want great academic learning spaces. They want good courtroom and law type spaces. So we need to adjust that. So maybe that's take out some pecans, add in some glacé cherries, or maybe that's just changing the data and the structure of how the models are put together to suit the needs of the university. The next thing then is to use this and then learn lessons. So we bake the cake, we taste it, we find out that it's too sweet, so we remove some sugar next time. That might be the equivalent of having a model with data in it that you never use, which you're paying money for every time you procure data. So we might want to take some of that data away because it's not useful to us. And then the next thing is to keep learning. So I think one of the main problems organizations like UE have, other institutions as clients, they want to get everything perfect before they start. So they want the perfect EIR before they start the project, which just leads them to not starting. I think the much more powerful process is if we produce an EIR as best we can, start doing BIM, start doing a project, get that project delivered, and then get feedback, work out what didn't go right, and then improve the EIR for next time. And we've done lots and lots of projects in BIM, and every time we're learning something new and feeding that back in, and every process gets better. The next thing is to focus. So what is your core objective? Focus on getting that right, and then expand the scope from there on. So we had to start with one building and getting that right. We didn't start with a completely digitized campus. So what we wanted was one building with accurate data, and then we've moved on now to having a completely digitized campus where about 91% of our buildings digitized. We've got asset data in most of the models, which is very useful. We've got the underground information, service information that you've seen, and we're starting to incorporate things for health and safety. All of this takes time and effort, but we're always working towards that end goal. And then you need to have a plan. So how will you roll out BIM in the organization? And the two best tips I can give anyone is to, one, look for the low-hanging fruit. So for us, the information being produced already by architects in 3D, we could use that to quickly make some visualizations, which we're really great at selling the projects to the bosses, to the vice chancellor, and getting buy-in for projects. And the next thing is to make sure the base information is accurate. So everything we do from now on, we're going to build on that base information. That model needs to represent what's on site, and we need to have the data so we can identify the components, and everything we do will build off of that. And if we don't do that, and sorry for anyone outside the UK that's not going to get the next reference, you're going to end up with a soggy bottom. So everything's going to fall out of the bottom here, and this is a reference to a show which is quite popular in the UK called The Great British Bake Off.
Soggy bottom, here. I was laughing, Mike, but my mic was muted, so. Very dramatic impact there for you, mate.
So the next thing is we need to focus where data is most readily available to have a successful strategy to rolling this out to a campus like the university has. So data availability drops off as we go down this list that I've made here. So when we're doing new build, we've got access to accurate geometry and we've got access to the asset information. The next level down from that is to do a laser scan. And laser scans are great. You can get really, really accurate geometry from a laser scan, but the data is going to be very limited. So we can tell that something's there and we might be able to identify the type of component it is, but scanning a light fitting or scanning a boiler doesn't tell us the make, the model, and all of that other data that we'd normally want to put into the model. So, retrospective laser scanning is an opportunity missed compared to capturing information at the new build stage. And then the final step on this that we've utilized is to use the existing 2D information and to sort of extrude that geometry. Because what we want to do is get to the point where we're working in a consistent manner, so every project is the same. So we've been able to quickly digitize almost all of our estate by using these three methods. And there's not always money available for a laser scan. We'd love to laser scan everything, but sometimes we've had to use the 2D geometry. So we have to deal with the fact that that's going to be inaccurate, and it's going to have very limited data depending on what notes were on the original drawings. And incidentally, the three pictures on the right hand side are all of the same space. So step 3 is to learn your own lessons, but also learn lessons from peers. It's much quicker to learn from others' mistakes than having to make them all yourself. So what I wanted to do next was sort of share some of the things that we've done. and look at the different Revit stages. And here we go. So again, I'm going to drop into Revizto and do some live demoing. So the things that we need to start thinking about, and again, if you're in a different country and you don't use the Revit stages, this is just a progression of a project really from stage 0 to 7 in use, and you'll probably have something similar locally. So at stage 0, what we need to think about is the contract, making sure that there's a contractual requirement to deliver BIM on a project. UE's got our BIM documents, so our EIR, our asset information requirements, AIR, we've got a responsibility matrix document, and we need to make sure that those are all contractual requirements, but also that they're filled in, completed, etc. And we also need to review lessons learned. And I'm just going to swap windows again and just show you what I found to be a really useful tool. Is we've just got this Revizto environment. There's no geometry in here. There's nothing. It's just documentation. So for example, I can click on our BIM documentation. I can open up our EIR, and I can start to work through that document. And what that does, it makes it really easy for sharing, because we're adding members of our supply chain into our Revizto license, so they already have a license. I can share this as an additional project with them. They can see all of this documentation, and if they have queries, they can use the Revizto markup tools. They can say, Mike, what are you talking about, etc., and go done. And they can then assign that to me to come back and respond to their comments, which is quite good, because that's the same workflow that we're using for the rest of the project commenting. Likewise with things like design guides and things like that, it just allows that conversation piece to take place. And I said already, review lessons. Then moving on to Revit Stage 2, you'll see at the top here, we've got, from here on, everything is being pushed into Revizto at each stage as well. So at stage 2, we need to decide, do we have an existing model that can be used for the project, or do we need to commission a laser scan? And I'm going to just drop into here again and just show you what a laser scan looks like in Revizto. So this is all the point cloud stuff, and what I can do is I can also turn on, this one has a full 3D model. So this particular point cloud scan was used to check the validity of the model that was handed over after construction, because we had a number of issues with it. So here you should see now, hopefully everything is in the place that it's actually in. But we can produce Revit models from 3D scans as well. So that's something you need to think about around stage 2. At stage 3, we've got 3D client review. So I work for the University's Estates Department. We have an end user client. We need them to be able to see the scheme. We can share that in 3D in Revizto. We also use a tool called Enscape, which gives a bit more nice graphics, higher end graphics. And we can get the client to walk through that either on a screen, a tablet, or we can also stick him into virtual reality. And we can do other things like produce QR codes that people can scan with their phones and have a look at what's going on, what's being proposed. And the reason I say this should fit in around stage 3 is that at the end, during stage 3 is where planning permission comes in. So if there are any decisions that the client wants to make that's going to change the planning, at a later date, we don't want that to happen. We want to capture that now before we move past that point. So moving on into stage 4, we've got a CDM review taking place. So this is where we would sit down around a table with the main contractor, with the design team, and with our maintenance team, and we would look at how the building is going to be maintained. Do we have, as you'll see in this model, do we have things like high-level light fittings? So we've got emergency light fittings on the underside of the bridge structures here. They're very difficult to maintain. That needs mute access, mobile elevated working platform. So that puts load onto this floor. We've had things like floor tiles crack. You know, if we have these discussions earlier on, could we have perhaps put the lighting that's currently located in the middle of the bridge to the side and had it point into this space so that it makes the maintenance of those much easier. So that's the advantage of having that discussion at that point in time. The other thing we need to do as a BIM team is we need to check the data that's going into the model. So we haven't talked about CAFM yet. So CAFM is the database environment where we manage our works request and our planned maintenance. So we need to put data into that environment, but it needs to fulfill what we've stated in our asset information requirements. So we need to start in early stage. You need to think about what character restrictions, data type restrictions you have, and then at stage 4, you need to start checking that the designers are complying with what you've asked for. So moving on to stage 5, depending on the size of the project, we might use Revizto to capture changes being made on site. So the contractor might choose to do that for themselves, or if we're talking about small works, we can get the contractor to take photographs and mark up what they're changing so that we can make those changes in-house and keep our models up to date. Moving on to stage 6, we've got the data and model check. So at stage 4, we did a data check. There'll be more data in the model by stage 6, so we're going to rerun that data check, make sure everything's meeting the requirements. But importantly, we're also going to do a model check. So we're going to go on site with a mobile device, with Revisto, and we're going to check that the spaces handed over in the model look like the spaces on site. And that might sound like a silly thing to need to do, but we've had plant rooms handover that look nothing like the plant rooms in reality. So it really defeats the objective of BIM if that's the case. So we need to make sure that we're doing that check and we can rely on the information that's in our models. I've got a few more lines running through multiple sections at the bottom here. So we've got docs. So Revizto introduced the integrations with other packages, and if I just go into this model again, you can see at the top here we've got docs availability, and if I click on there, so we're using docs for our projects as a common data environment. So this is an integration with Box, and we're also using it in the FM part of the build as well. So we've got record information here, and in here you should be able to get to all of the various building manuals and things. So what this is giving us is really a single pane of glass where we can see everything about that building. So the 3D models, the 2D plans, any issues and commentary going on, and also the PDF building manuals, which I think this is taking a long time to load because it's absolutely massive. But perhaps if I just go in and open something a little bit smaller to demonstrate that. 2.5 meg. We might be slightly hampered by the broadband speed at home. That's there we go. So
fine. I think we're all struggling with that at the moment. Mike's looking great. So whilst you're waiting for that, I'll just throw a question in. So you were talking about allowing the teams to take the project out on the site, which on a tablet. So somebody's asking, Mike, for changes made on site, do you use Revisto to push markup issues, views back to the team to allow them to make changes in Revit or in the model, I guess, so they can update the model?
Yes, we do.
Talk about stamps in a second, but thought that might be a good one to ask now.
Yeah, from our point of view, that's mainly the smaller work. So where we've used our maintenance contractor to maybe go and install some new sockets or something like that, and we want to be able to keep the model up to date. So we want to add that information in. So they can just put a stamp or an issue on the model, take a photograph, and tell us a bit about the works that they've done, and that enables us to just keep everything up to date. For construction works, that really depends on the contract type. Where we've done very small projects, we've taken the same approach as the small works. Where we've got a more capable main contractor, or the works are much bigger, we'll either use the main contractors themselves to update the models. Sometimes they'll pass it back to the design team, and on some occasions they'll use a third party to do the updating for them, where they don't have the capability in-house. So hopefully that answers that question, Rhys.
I think so. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
And I know you want to show stamps in a bit, but I'll leave you continue.
Yeah, I'll get on with I'll get onto the stamps in a sec.
Yep.
You'll see the next bar down here is design, comment, and coordination. So that's happening from stage 2 right the way up into construction for any contractor's design portions. It's giving everyone in the team the opportunity to review a design and add comments and markups to that. We've also got clash resolution. Most of our clash detection is done in Navisworks, but the actual clashes themselves are then exported as Revizto issues so that they can be managed and closed out. And then the final one down the bottom here is the snags and the defects. And I think that's where the stamps have been very, very useful. So if I just go back to this project and into the issue tracker, most of these in here are actually model snags, so things that were missing in the model, but we could see them in the 3D scan. So they were being assigned to people within that team so that they could deal with it, and they had the commentary in the watches and everything like that to help us really manage getting the model sorted out.
You were just explaining what a stamp is, Mike, for anybody that hasn't seen Revisto before.
Quite no way. There we go. Back home again. So it's probably easiest to explain stamps after explaining issues. So we can put this speech bubble onto an area where we've got an issue to raise, and type a comment in there to explain what that issue is. It then raises it within the issue tracker. We can do things like adding documents in there. We can take photographs to explain it. Issues have status, so they move through a logical progression of being open, in progress, solved, closed. We've got, we can assign deadlines, priorities, assignees, assignee being the most important one. So I've raised an issue, I need someone to go and sort that issue out. So I give that an assignee, and various things like that. We can also do markups on here. So edit markup. We could put a bubble around it. We could put some text on it. That kind of thing. So the question was, what's a stamp? And the stamps are sort of like the progression of that is, we're getting lots of issues of the same type. For example, snags and defects. And we just want to pre-package lots of those fields that we just filled out together, so that they're always the same for this type of issue. So we've got things in here like asset missing, the scan being incomplete, the size and position incorrect. But on more recent projects, we're using this much more for things like carpentry problems. Perhaps we're getting cracking, different issues like that. And Revit is actually, I'm not going to have time to show off this today, but there's also a back end where you can get reports and things out. So we can start reporting based on the stamps. We can show how many issues of different types are open on a project at any one time. And we've also been able to use them for health and safety. So UE does something called a performance notice. We can give a red, yellow, or a green card to a contractor to say either a green card, well done, you've shown best practice in terms of safety, or a red card, you need to stop work right away and sort this out before you continue. And we've also been able to use the stamps for that, so we can show how many red, yellow, and green cards have been issued on projects. So yeah, if I want to do a stamp, I just do that, and it's automatically been assigned to someone to take care of that issue for you. I'll just delete that before I really confuse her. Yeah, so in terms of the presentation and what I wanted to show you, I've really kind of got to the end of that. So does anyone have any questions?
That's great. Thanks, Mike. Really insightful, and it, I'd just like to share, the journey I suppose we've been on together over the last couple of years. Mike has been instrumental in sharing how the university has been utilising Revisto and sharing their feedback, comments, thoughts on how we can progress the technology to better suit their needs. So yeah, thanks for that, Mike, and presentation great as always. So we'll open the floor to questions now. So if anyone has any questions, then you can use the chat log. Some of those we've answered as we've gone through. I'll ask a few questions, Mike, I suppose, whilst people are typing away. So typically, how long does it take you to upskill a user to use Revisto?
I think that is probably one of the things that's quite nice about the software compared to some of the others that we've looked at. The interface is actually relatively simple, so we can get people going quite quickly on it. And what they tend to do is then gain different skills over a period of time, so they can get going quite quickly. And then you'll show them something one day and they're like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. And they kind of gradually gain the skill base to maybe use the section tool or things like that. What we've also done is we've put together, and I'll just change slide again back to where I was showing those documents. Done is put together a number of sort of very simple one-page instruction guides for different aspects of the software. If I just remember how to use the software myself. So we've got a number of sort of Revizto guides here, sort of just two on the basics of how to navigate and use the various features like the phasing, the objects, how to section, hide things, dimension. We've got a one-pager on how to comment. That isn't so relevant to this section, but then the very basics of the navigation, how to walk around the map view, the 2D information, and getting around by using the rooms.
Mike's been quite creative here as well, where he's uploaded those training guides, PDFs, into the Revisto application as well. So you can link in PDFs into the Revisto project. So that's, if you hadn't already noticed that. Mike being quite creative with his use of Revisto.
Yeah, one for our maintenance contractor. Are you changing an asset? How to tell us about the change? I think one of the key things here as well is they've got the opportunity to check the asset before they go to site. So one of the things we wanted to save was the amount of unproductive time, the time spent traveling to site to have a look at something, only to realize that you need a certain light bulb or something, or a set of steps that you could have taken to site with you in the first place if you'd sort of looked at the problem ahead of time.
Perfect. A couple of others come through. Can we get the slide deck afterwards? We'll be sharing the recording afterwards with everyone anyway. If Mike is happy to share that, then we can share it with you as well. What else? A couple of other questions. More share requests for yourself, Mike. Do you share your BIM standards? Do you have a Revisto implementation guide that other estate owners could use that fits into BIM level 2? Oh, there we go.
We have shared some of our guidance. Again, like Rhys is going to share this recording, so you'll have anything that I've shared on screen during this. It's probably best just to contact me offline if you want some particular information.
Yeah, or myself, Mike, and I can have a one-to-one with anyone that wants specific information. But there's obviously a lot of work and effort that's gone into that implementation guide, so I wouldn't expect you just to hand it out willy-nilly, Mike. So let's. Any other questions in terms of access for the wider project team? You did touch on this. Getting those engaged and licensing, how does that work for UE?
So UE's taken the approach of being the license holder for the project. So we've got quite a few licenses that we've capitalized the cost of over the the whole of the sort of projects that we do. So we assign from early stages the design team and then the contractor licenses for our projects.
Perfect. Nice and easy. It might sort of talk to how that licensing works. So if you are already a client, then you'll be invited in effectively free of charge. I think we're more or less there on time. So if there aren't any other questions, we'll move on. But I suppose the final one from me, Mike, is what's the next big BIM or digital thing in the university's digital journey? What have you got up your sleeve? Anything that you're sort of happy to share now? Your plans for the next 6 months? Are there any sort of major changes, developments that you're thinking of changing or introducing to the process?
Yeah, the things that we're working on right now is, it's probably not the most technical thing in the world, but we've got a requirement for all the users around the university, so all the academics and students, to be able to access plans of different spaces. So we're going through a process of setting up sheets in all the various models at the moment and publishing them to a web environment, which is a little bit more interactive than sort of just clicking on a list. We've got a sort of render of the buildings of the site where you can click on different buildings and bring up PDFs of various plans of the building. So that's one thing we're working on. And in terms of uplifting the models, the next things we're working on is incorporating fire information so that we're producing fire plans, and also making sure that any fire partition's got its sort of 30 or 60 minute rating recorded against it. The same with doors. And really just building in more of the health and safety information as well, so that we've got a risk symbol. We'd like to get all of the all of that safety information graphically based and connected to a database.
Oh, perfect. Lots to do there. So
always lots to do.
That's right. So not quite there yet, and will we ever be?
Yeah, there's always something else to do.
Yes, that's good. That's been really interesting, Mike. Really appreciate you taking the time to share your story. And if you could hold on another 20 minutes, that'd be great. And if there are any other questions for Mike, we can take those in our roundtable session in 20, 30 minutes time. So that's great. Thanks, Mike. So we'll move from Bristol now to Frankfurt and introduce you to Sasha Kuna. Sasha, how are you?
Hey guys. Hey, I'm fine. Thanks. Thanks a lot for that presentation, Mike. That was very interesting and sets the bar quite high for me now. Giving my very best.
Yes, Sasha, jumping across them from the digital world of university estates to some of the integration that we've been doing by customer demand with Bentley and MicroStation. So Sasha's got a heck of a lot of experience with these tools. So I thought it would be great if we could invite Sasha in today to talk about what we've done in that space and actually show you around that integration. So Sasha, I'll hand the mic to you to introduce yourself to our watchers today and deliver the presentation. Thanks, mate.
Thanks a lot, Rhys, for that brief introduction. Again, my name is Sasha Kühner. I am based in Frankfurt in Germany, and I'm taking care of our German-speaking clients in the DACH region, which is Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. And it's a completely different topic now. We are talking a bit about our newest member in our plugin family, which is a Bentley MicroStation plugin. I have a long-term MicroStation background. I guess that is the reason why I have the honor to walk you through this session today. That will take approximately 20 minutes, and I will talk to you about the general requirements which are needed to work with that plugin on the Revisto side, and on the MicroStation side, we will talk about the plugin installation and setup. That might be the most important part of the session for you guys out there who want to test or work with that plugin afterwards. We will have a look at the graphical user interface and the export to Revisto. Only 3 buttons, so that will be a quick one. We will talk about the compatibility with Bentley vertical applications. I know that is very interesting for all of you guys who are not working directly with MicroStation, but with other application like in-rail or open roads. And we will discuss the current status, which is a beta status. I am not getting tired of mentioning that. It is still a beta status. And I will give a foretaste of what is to come in the final version. Sounds like a long session, but it isn't. We'll take approx 20 minutes. And before we jump over to the MicroStation, I will talk to you about the general requirements. On the Revisto side, we need at least Revisto 4.12, which was released back in December 2019. At that time, the Revisto plugin was introduced as an alpha version. The installation was disabled by default, so you had to enable it manually. That is not the case in the latest version, and I highly recommend always using the latest version, especially if you are using beta or alpha versions, because we are working constantly and improving constantly our beta version of this plugin. So I highly recommend always using the latest Revisto version. I will show that with the latest Revisto version as well, so nothing special. That is the official version with which we will have a look in a few minutes. On the Bentley side, we need MicroStation Connect. It is not compatible to V8i. We need a MicroStation Connect 10.13 or higher. And that is true to all Bentley verticals as well. Most of them are based on MicroStation Connect as well, and they need a Connect 10.13 or higher as well. But I will talk more about that at the end of today's session. So far, so good. Let's jump over to the MicroStation. And first of all, after the installation of Revisto, you have to implement the Revisto plugin into your MicroStation ribbon bar. You guys who use MicroStation are used to that. The plugin is installed automatically, but it is not implemented into your ribbon bar automatically. And you can take notes, but I posted an instruction manual of these few steps that I show you afterwards in the chat function of today's session. So please feel free to download it, and I'll walk you through these steps. To enable the plugin in MicroStation or the verticals, you have to click on File in the upper left corner and go to Settings. And under User, you find Customize Ribbon. And the next one is an important one. I always forget it with every implementation I do. You have to switch from buttons to tabs, because otherwise you won't see the Revisto plugin, which is down there. And now all we have to do is bring it from the left side to the right side. In my case, you can see it in the background. I already implemented the Revisto plugin under Drawings. And please don't ask me the correct Bentley term of this right side. Let's call it Customize Ribbon Configuration. Whatever, you can have different configs of your ribbon bar. And I implemented in the Revisto plugin under Drawing. But a little tip, you can implement it in as many configurations as needed. So for example, we could implement it under Modeling as well. Let's do that quickly. You have to choose Revisto on the left side, Modeling on the right side, and then click Add. After that, you can drag and drop it to the bottom, for example, and apply. That's all. After doing that, the Revisto plugin will be visible under Drawing and under Modeling in my case. Here you go. And next thing would be the graphical user interface. As promised, only 3 buttons, so not too much to show. The most important one is the export function. And let's have a brief look. That looks similar to most of our other plugins. That is quite important to us. Always have the same look and feel with any plugin we develop. And not too much to set up here. We can export the 3D model. we can pull through viewpoints, materials, and our grids. And that one, for all of you guys who haven't used a Revisto plugin before, that one is an important one. This drop-down menu lists all the views, all the saved views within MicroStation or any other application that is using a Revisto plugin. And this view, which is selected over here, defines the export. What do I mean with that? The functionality behind it is named, the name is what you see is what you get. The MicroStation users should know this because it's the same functionality that MicroStation uses when you plot a plan. So whatever is displayed in that view will be exported to Revisto. Whatever is hidden in that view will stay in the MicroStation and won't be exported to Revisto. So that is quite important one. Our tip is to create a Revisto export view, choose that once, and use that all the time for your Revisto export. Next and last thing of the export functionality is export sheets. We can export all of them, or we can select and specify the sheets we want to pull through the plugin. And that is a bit special in MicroStation, as some of you might know. In MicroStation, we have the freedom to create, handle, and store sheets in many different ways. And it's quite a tough challenge for us to cover all of them, but we give our best to do so. At the moment, the beta status of the plugin, we cover the most common way, which is the sheets in the sheet section of MicroStation, the sheet section of the model we are in right at the moment. That is the most common way. That is the way Bentley communicates it in nowadays, but there are many other ways, and we try to cover all of them in the final version. Anyway, we are already linked to a Revisto project, and if you hit export, we will export the 3D model plus the sheets selected. I won't do that because I don't want to waste time with you staring on a progression bar. I already did that, so let's close that down. The last two buttons are more or less self-explaining. The issue tracker will pull up the Revisto issue tracker on this specific project. And the last one is creating a new issue within your MicroStation environment. That is important for us because we want to minimize that context switching, that application switching. So if you spot something over here, you can directly create an issue within the Revisto issue tracker and say, for example, like so. Something like that. Now we created a new issue from MicroStation directly into the Revisto issue tracker. Let's stay in Revisto and have a look what else is coming through with the plugin. First of all, our saved views, that is a term in MicroStation, right? Our saved views are pulled through the plugin. If you set that flag in the export dialog, so it's called named views, saved views, whatever. In MicroStation, we are working heavily with these views, and if you want to have them in Revisto, just set the flag, and we will pull them through. In the second folder, you see your, I don't know how the English term is for it, but the standard views in MicroStation. So the ones that we have down here. So the 8 standard views in MicroStation are pulled through as well, and you can use them directly in Revisto. Beside the viewpoints, we import sheets as well. In my case, I imported only one sheet. Let's see how it looks. That is what we have in Revisto. There is already an issue created down here. And let's jump over to the MicroStation. Sorry for switching applications constantly, but there's no better way to show it to you. Let's pull up that sheet in MicroStation. I guess it should be this one. That is how it looks in MicroStation. And over to Revisto. That is how it looks in Revisto. As you can see on the house icon, we can overlay it as well. The hypermodeling is working in the current version of the of our plugin. As you can see, the camera position is not perfect, so there's still room for improvement, but the most important thing is that the sheet is overlaid perfectly. We can move it together with a 3D model. We can pull the 3D through the 2D sheet. You guys know that function, so I don't want to waste more time on it. Hypermodeling, feature that is being heavily used in Revisto and works perfectly with our Revisto, with our MicroStation sheets as well. And last but not least, another feature that is being heavily used as well in any of our plugins is the switchback functionality. And let me show to you what I mean, and well, create a new issue quickly, like so, something like that. Huh? And create a new issue over there. Merge, you call that boiler? Maybe, yeah. Should be right. Something like that. Merge boiler 1 and 2. Now we created a new issue in 3D, and as you guys know, we can spot these issues in Revisto. We can track them, we can manage them perfectly, but for most of them, or for a lot of them, we can't solve them in Revisto. But we have to switch back to our authoring system. And this switchback functionality is working in our current status of the plugin as well. Let me do a split screen between MicroStation and Revisto, and go back to the quite a complex model, isn't it? And the model. And to do that switch back from Revisto to MicroStation, what we see right now is the Revisto application on the right side of my screen and the MicroStation application on the left side. And to do that switch back, we only have to double click the issue, and then we create a new display set in your MicroStation model. As you can see, we create that section box for you, and you can directly start working with it. And the beauty of that is that it's completely platform neutral. So, for example, 2 different disciplines are involved in that issue. Both of them double click the same issue, and on the one side we jump into the MicroStation, and on the other side to Revit, for example, create the relevant section box, and both disciplines can start working out that issue. And for sure that works for all of these issues. Double click on them and we jump directly to that openings. In that case, that is a distributor, and double click on it, and we have the new display set of in our MicroStation model. And that feature is being used heavily and saves so much time and minimizes the source of error. So really a nice feature that adds value to our projects. So far, so good to the live presentation. Let me switch to my last slide, which is inside Revisto as well, and talk about the compatibility with Bentley verticals and the current status and the final version of the Revisto plugin, the MicroStation plugin. What we can do today is we can export sheets and export the 3D model. You might notice that I named it one of 2. I'll explain that when we come to the right side, to the final version. We can do the hypermodeling, the automatic 2D, 3D overlay. We can create issues directly in MicroStation, import the saved views, and we can do the switch back from Revisto to MicroStation. We have seen all that already adds value to our projects and is usable from today on, but we know that there is still room for improvement. And let's have a look at the final version and what we are going to do in the next few weeks. We will improve the export of the sheets and the 3D model. In case of sheets, I already mentioned it. It is a bit it is a bit special how MicroStation handles sheets. There are many different ways how sheets can be stored. and created in MicroStation. For example, some vertical applications on MicroStation create sheets in a new DGN that lives beside our 3D model, and not in the sheet section. And there are many different ways to create sectionings in MicroStation. And we really try to cover all, or at least the most relevant versions of that. Same with the 3D model. As the MicroStation users know, or the Bentley users know, that Bentley software works heavily with the reference functionality. So we have live references, which are references of a references of a reference. And this hierarchy can get quite complex. And we at Revisto try to not only import the objects and the metadata behind it, but we want to give you the ability to work with that hierarchy as well. That is quite complex and tough for our development, but we are improving that constantly and trying to overtake that as well.
Perfect. Well, I'm just conscious of time, Sasha, so I know we're pretty much there. So what we'll do now, we'll take some questions at the end. Anything else from you, Sasha, or can we jump into the teaser with Lewis on version 5?
More or less done, yeah.
Yeah, we just want to conscious of time, so we'll keep things moving. That's great. Thank you to our Bentley expert, Sasha, for that. Really, really interesting. And for me, it's great to see us jumping from Revit to Bentley into Revisto. Simultaneously, the interface and continuity is really, really important to us. So regardless of what tool you're using, authoring tool, Revisto, we try to provide you a solution that is pretty much the same across all platforms. So that's perfect. Thank you, Sasha. And if you do have any questions for Sasha or that workflow specifically, his details are there and will be shared afterwards.